usually we think of ABCD as, or I'm sorry, in ABCD, we think of churches as institutions, but for those that inhabit them, hopefully, they think of them also as communities. So I think there's some sort of complication that we need to be aware of as pastors. That on the one hand, church, at least in this work, is at its worst when we need to only be an institution and be very sort of sterile and veggie garden like. Um, and yet, there are certain realities that's the space we inhabit. So I think that there's some tension there that maybe is might be helpful even just to name that we're sort of at this like weird um, paradox is probably too big of a word, but we're simultaneously sort of embodying different identities within this framework, I think.
I would say just the general mind shift that comes in that introduction section, it is so big, and we as individual pastors are not going to be able to get like the denomination or even the conference making that shift with us. They're still going to be functioning from a needs based mindset because that's the world we live in. But we can work with our local people, with our community, the church within the community to make that shift. And but keeping that in mind is like we have this huge force pulling us in this other direction, and centuries of practice of seeing needs. So making this shift is a big mental process, and it takes time and it takes a lot of practice, just like, I mean, maybe it's our spiritual practice, right, of just constantly catching ourselves and making that shift from needs to assets, in everything we do and in the smallest of ways. That's going to change our thinking, right? Behaviors actually change thinking. So when we think of it maybe in that language that we're familiar with, like a spiritual practice, it can be a part of the culture we create and shift within our congregation, just like we would with prayer or Sabbath, or any of these great things we want to teach. This is another one of them that feels very Christ-like and very like early church. Everybody has something to offer, and we take care of each other. And it's one of these important cultural and mental shifts we can help lead at our level. And hopefully, with enough of us doing it, it'll be a grassroots movement, and eventually, the folks above us, I hope, will find that shift as well.
I also, to add to Corey, she's the word culture, and I think that that's something that might be worth naming as well. Is it's not only countercultural. ABCD is not only countercultural to the dominant culture, but even in the dominant church culture or the dominant nonprofit culture. And to talk about how it's this sort of subversion, that all of that, what we're really looking for is a cultural shift. And that takes time. I know for me personally, I think there were some others on our group that felt a lot of anxiety almost reading some of these ideas and concepts, and just that like almost like a guilt. Oh man, like look, our church, that's not structure. Oh man, it's so much work, you know. And just to like say really early that this is going to take time, it's going to take patience. And again, I don't know if that's clergy specific. I don't know if that's Methodist specific or Upper New York specific, but I know that there's just been so many. This is background for you, Wendy. There's just been so many times where like the conference has like rolled out a new training or a new concept or a new checklist of tasks that we have to do to save the church. And so, at least for me personally, I think that's part of the reason why the anxiety part of my brain started firing, was because it just felt like, okay, now they're there. So I don't know. I don't really know how to build the bridge efficiently or whatever, but just to have clergy be aware that like this is what we're doing, this is what we're up to. It'll take a while. It's a long term thing. It's gradual. It's quiet.